good part of being the last session is that therefore we can run this for the next 2 hours and all of you all will still hear us patiently. No, we're kidding. I think a bunch of us, just as a background, we are from INSEAD. It's a B school in France, with a presence also in Singapore and Abu Dhabi. We are alums from this B school. All of us, we are about 50-60 of us alums in Hyderabad. Some of them are around, you can go around and meet some of them as well. But we meet every month, and as part of that meetup, we decided that there's something that we would love to do is to engage with THub. The INSEAD as a B school has about 60,000 alums across the world, and entrepreneurship is one of the key topics that most alums adopt as a career and take on from there. For us at Hyderabad, this is our small way of sort of engaging with the world of entrepreneurship in Hyderabad. We are in fact, as part of the INSEAD also has an angel network. We invest in startups and we are signing up with THub to be a potential source of funding for the startups around in THub. So just as a quick background. My name is Vivek Subramanian. I'm a founder of a firm called Fourth Partner Energy, which sort of supplies renewable energy to corporates, and that's what I do. We set this up in Hyderabad about 12 years back. We have about 400 employees across the world, about 150 of them in Hyderabad. We've raised about $500 million primarily to own renewable energy assets that service these corporates. But my job is to speak to these two very sharp gentlemen, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, Kiran and Sandeep. Kiran, you want to start by just giving a background to yourself, please?
Thanks, Vivek. Hope everybody is not too bored or tired after this long a day. So, my name is Kiran Gadela. I am the co-founder and managing director of Oasis Fertility. We are a chain of fertility centers. It's a 25 centers in a specialty chain. Predominantly in South India, headquartered in Hyderabad. A first generation entrepreneur, mostly in the tech space before my second innings of starting with Oasis. And right after I started Oasis, I had the fortune to join INSEAD, and then that sort of helped me scale the business to where it is right now. And I look forward to the conversation. I also invest in health, primarily healthcare and health tech startups. So very excited to see what THub is going to offer in the time to come. Cheers.
Super good. Thanks. Sandeep?
Thanks, Vivek. I'm Sandeep. Glad that I'm able to share some knowledge that I've gathered over the last decade or so working in e-commerce. Been a part of Amazon, right now with Reliance, also doing e-commerce.
Super. Thanks, guys. So our topic of discussion is India's next decade. I think recently, Minister Piyush Goyal has talked about where India will be in a few decades from now. But let's just break this down to the next decade. And even if you follow the simple 7% growth number, we should double our GDP from where we are. And that's a fantastic opportunity. Most of us have the opportunity to travel abroad. When you look across, especially in the last couple of months, in markets like the US and Europe, there is definitive gloom. But in India, I think the growth story has a much larger demographic rationale, has a much larger consumption rationale. And I was hoping that the two of you can draw from your respective areas. Where do you see the growth coming? What are the key drivers? What's keeping you excited in your space? Sandeep, you want to start first, please, especially with consumer tech. What's happening with the large boys, Amazons and Reliances of the world?
Sure, we can get started. I think you already said the context well, Vivek. I think this decade, the past decade also seemed like India's decade. A couple of things which are going well for India. Right? Number one, just the buying population. Right? The consumer population is increasing leaps and bounds. Out of say 150 crores population, I read an article that says that 75 plus crores, it's almost 60% of the population now has 4G, which means them using technology to consume products is going to rise. And so that's a really high bar. I mean, just the population, the working population and the consumer population is so large that it's already set that context. And I agree with you, just if you look at the investments that have come in the last half a decade or so, right? I was just reading another article which says until last year, we had about 40 plus unicorns, and in a year, that number is now 80 plus. So double, and I think 50% of them are in the consumer tech again. Any industry, but technology enabled, right? It could be logistics, it could be commerce, it could be healthcare, everything's being backed by tech. So I think huge opportunity. And one thing I would like to round off, I've been very passionate about small and medium businesses and SMEs. That I think is going to be the core of the decade going forward. Along with consumers, I think a huge opportunity for MSMEs in India. There's about, I think, 60 to 70 crore MSMEs. I think the opportunity for them to organize themselves and ride this growth wave. So I think these are initial thoughts that come to my mind on how the decade went and how it's going to look like.
On the MSMEs, Sandeep, just take another minute on this. How much transformation have you seen, especially for the work that you've done, etc., where a lot of them who have now, as you said, organized themselves, got their act together, focused on domestic markets, and now I presume exports as well? A lot happening on the export side?
100%. I think we should appreciate the government's initiative, central government as well as states. I think exports has become a huge boon to MSMEs, right? So I tell you, fortunately I was in India building the e-commerce journey for Amazon when I started, right? So I traveled the entire 0 to 1 journey on how e-commerce evolved in India. From an MSME side, two things happened. One, existing MSMEs who are already manufacturing, selling to consumers, right? They managed to enable themselves technologically. When I joined Prion, it was a joint venture for Amazon, we were doing work at the grassroots levels. So we had to go and train these MSMEs one by one for them to adopt technology. We had to convince them to adopt 4G when it initially launched in 2015-2016. From then to now, people know that there is so much happening in the e-commerce space. Don't have to go and convince them. They ask for technology. Hey, I'm already selling online, but this is taking a lot of time. When are you going to give me the next feature that will make it simpler for me? Second thing which has happened in the MSME space, along with people adopting technology, it has given born to a new set of folks in the industry. Photo studios for digital imaging, logistics players. It's not just the big guys, not just the Gatis and D2Ds, D2DC and others, right? There's so many thriving smaller logistics partners or smaller digital enablers that thrive. So I think two things, existing guys adapting technology and opportunity for newer MSMEs. I think it's been a splendid decade. It's going to be very, very good for them the next decade also.
Absolutely, and proof of the fact is, the larger, bigger boys like your Reliances of the world are setting up online marketplaces to go alongside.
100%. I think it was a matter of time, and now I can safely say that there is a huge investment from the big guys. Reliance is just one of them. Tata, everyone is investing big in digital, and thankfully all of them are thinking about small and medium businesses. How do we take SMEs along? Because they contribute to 30-40% of the country's GDP. So there's no way in hell we'll grow if they don't grow. So I think it's connected.
Just to add to what Sandeep was mentioning, I think we need to celebrate that a little more as well in the country. What we do as MSMEs is such a core to our businesses, and usually we hear about the unicorns, the big ones, but the companies which do these 100 crores with about a 25% EBITDA, there are plenty of them, lots of them who actually provide a lot of employment, do a lot of work there.
And the related point being entrepreneurship. I mean, just to share a personal experience, last week I was in the Philippines, came back from there, and when I went to sort of assess the Philippines market, there are about 100 large families who sort of control a dominant share of the business community in the market there. Entrepreneurship, therefore, is so difficult to come about, and we should feel very proud about, I think, the market that is prevalent here, about the kind of work that both startups as well as centers like these are encouraging, but then also through the SME sectors which are probably family-run businesses that have been running forever and making sure that there's a sustained person. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the next generation again in those businesses, they want to actually now come and create new revenue streams, try to actually digitize them, and in fact one of the startups, Niche Brains, one of our INSEAD alum is trying to do is more about, how do we actually digitally enable them. And the other startup that I heard recently in one of the Indian INSEAD Agent Network, this thing was Bazaar, where they're enabling selling items like hardware, where they never had access to some sort of a digital channel for them to sell those. So I think that's a very exciting thing again.
Good. Kiran, to you, and happy to hear about what we're talking about from a consumer tech, SME manufacturing play. What about the great Indian healthcare story? What are you seeing there, and why are you so confident that the next 10 years is going to be quite a happening time for that sector?
I think I'll just take on the point that Sandeep just mentioned about 70% of the people on 4G, or so I'll exactly put it in the context of the majority of the people that at least my area of work targets is 25 to 40 years. Again, that's about 65% of the Indian population. So just within this space, people are moving more from a curative treatment, healthcare being looked at something that is actually, if you have a problem, you get your healthcare problem solved, to more preventive and elective treatments there. And then, interestingly, I see, the more data that we are starting to read. I come from a tech background and I came into the healthcare space, so it was quite interesting to apply, those principles there, and to see that the consumer behavior in terms of understanding. Say for instance, when we started this 12 years ago, our business, we were treating Gen Y people. After 5 years, the set of people were millennials. Now it is Gen Z. So all three of them think entirely differently, And for us, the tier 2 towns has been a revelation, especially the adaptation to something like IVF, which probably you would think as a taboo, is doing extremely well in places like Ranchi, in places like Warangal, and these places people are extremely, they use mobiles, they check all this data. For them, more than, before it used to be, okay, a referral doctor telling, a patient should come here. Now they're going through our digital channels, and if the right information is given to them, and I think we've got that necessary workforce to make this happen very well for India. So I'm really bullish. And
We just heard about some cancer hospitals being opened in cities like Ludhiana. So I mean, a classic example again, where healthcare as is classically defined in big cities like Hyderabad can now spread across to even smaller cities, and with the consumption story being there. I'd like to share at least perspective from more an infrastructure perspective, construction perspective, power perspective from where we operate. I think, as we know, the construction sector in India, if you take it, is about 10-12% of the GDP. We're probably the third largest construction market in the world. So some of the biggest names in the construction business, be it in cement, steel, or any other equipment manufacturers for construction sector are also here. Infrastructure, consuming sectors like roads, we all are seeing across the board the development that has happened in the road network in India. I think India, all of us as Indians have always felt that when it comes to infrastructure, we're sometimes not there when we compare ourselves to the rest of the world, but I think that's changing. We are of course sometimes bottlenecked and constrained from a space perspective, but the innovation that we bring to the table when we even building infrastructure has been fabulous. In the power sector where we operate, we are super bullish about where India is going to be an absolute leader in the adoption of renewable energy. The targets that the government has set are extremely high, but also now using that renewable energy as a competitive advantage for areas like green hydrogen, etc., where because we have say more sun or better wind sites, we can actually generate green hydrogen at much lower costs compared to, say, most of Southeast Asia, and so on, and can therefore be a global supplier from here. And this sort of transformative position that India can take in spaces like renewable energy, or for that matter, most of construction to that extent, makes us believe that the next 10 years is going to be fabulous.
What are the challenges there, Vivek?
All classical, right? I think I was reading so construction, I'll give you a comparable example, I'll give you an anecdote that will make it contextual. So we implemented a solar power generating system on the roof of Jabalpur railway station. To get access to construct the plant, it took us 6 months to construct the plant. To get access on a daily basis was such a huge challenge, because I don't know if if you walk through Jabalpur railway station, I mean, you just have to lift your hand, you'll probably slap 3 guys. That's the proximity and density of the visitors there. And so the safety standards we had to adopt, the construction techniques we had to adopt, the time of the day that we could work was so much of a challenge. I think for us, our greatest strength, our population is always, a two-edged sword in that regard. And therefore, executing projects on time, getting it done, making sure that we can deliver what is committed to most of these infrastructure projects is always the greatest challenge. Funding is available, the need is there, everybody knows what's coming about. I think different funding types are available as well. So you have long-term financiers who are also there, but I think the execution challenge is of course the greatest there. And I think that is true not just of the infra sector, I think it is true for India's next decade as well. We have the promise, we have the technology, we have the pull, but we have to make it happen. And I think making it happen in India is as we all know, is a tremendously challenging part. I'm going to also allow for questions, so if anybody has any questions, please raise your arms. Guys here will be happy to take any of that. But while we are at it, guys, sorry, I think this is a very momentous day for Hyderabad per se, and I'm going to wrap up 10 minutes on this, 5 minutes maybe. I think momentous day for Hyderabad in general, and given that you guys have set up your big businesses here, what's the driver for this city? What are you all committing to in this city, especially under the Reliance brand? Would love to know.
I think one of the things that I've been observing for the longest infrastructure in Telangana, as well as the community here, they've enabled solid infrastructure for the city, right? From roads and buildings to everything. It's superb. Beyond that, what I've consistently noticed is the availability of talent, right? From technology to operations to customer service to AI. I think it's brilliant. I think these are the two things which are going really well for Hyderabad. Infrastructure clubbed with availability of talent. So that I think is going really well for Hyderabad. Like you said, I think for the largest e-commerce players, or to be players, talk about Amazon and Flipkart, Reliance, I think they've all set up bases here. 50% to 60% of their technology software development teams are based in Hyderabad. So is their operations teams, the transport operations centers, the logistics control towers. Everything's based in Hyderabad. So I think a long way to go, which is very starting.
Kiran?
Yeah, actually 2 points. One, I think it will be more personal. I just came back this morning from Paris. About 10 years back, I went to the Champs-Élysées, that street, and I see it now. Maximum about a 5% change. You just come and see what's outside here. I mean, it's almost like, this whole, whatever the CBD that we have with the IKEA, with the THub building, with the whole, it's a completely transformed city right now. It's amazing the way, Hyderabad is. Now, I'll talk more from a healthcare perspective. So I am sort of in the reproductive medicine space, so I have this chain of clinics. We have certain female hormonal drugs and all of that we used to, in the initial days, get it from Germany, get it from different places. All of them, just in the last 6 months, pretty much Bharat Serum, Ferring, everybody is setting up their shop here. And the life sciences, the Genome Valley is another place by itself, in which how things are sort of exponentially growing. And we see the convergence of technology and the healthcare coming through, much more in the next 3 to 4 years in Hyderabad. Very exciting.
Does will your business sort of tie up with
For now, no, but I think we're thinking we'll do something on the data side. We have the last 10 years data where we really want to work and do some predictive analytics, and also something on the, it's a little, I won't get into.
Thank you so much for being the part. Ladies and gentlemen, we request everyone to vacate this floor and please join us at the ground floor for networking. Thank you so much for being the part.